Hi guys, and welcome to another episode of Vichangry's Believe It or Not. I'm your host, Vichangry, and this is going to be my second episode. I did do it live last night. Unfortunately, I was having internet issues, so I'm having to re-record it and then upload it. I will go back to doing live as soon as my Wi-Fi comes back up and everything like that. Excuse me. So today we are going to be talking about my very own haunting, and then I'm going to talk about some experiences that I've had with other ghosts and spirits and things like that. And then lastly, we are going to be talking about the Weeping Woman, and that is the translated name from La Llorona. So that's what she's mostly commonly known as, but I will be referring to her as the Weeping Woman. And I thought it would be fun to tie that story in with today's episode because my haunting takes place right down the street from where there's a known haunting going on of the Weeping Woman, like a version of her, like on this road. It's called Crazy Horse Road, and it's like at this intersection where it meets with it's Crazy Horse, and I think it's like for some reason I am having the biggest brain fart, but it's Crazy Horse. Oh, and Old Stage Road. Duh, I'm going crazy. So anyways, sorry, I was a little trying to scramble to put this together. Not last minute, I did have it prepared, but with my video uploading, not so great, it kind of discouraged me a little bit. So I was like, no, but I resorted to re-recording it. So anyways, let's just go ahead and get right on into it. The news topics for this week, or this past week, where we got the Olympics going on. There was some controversy going on there with one of the, well, not one of them, a lot of the Olympians were doing something, like deciding to withdraw or not perform for various of different reasons. But anyways, the Olympics are still going on, and the craziest thing I heard over the past week, it's been probably about a week and a half now, was this new Mandela effect they have found on the Britney Spears video of Oops, I Did It Again. I'm pretty sure most of you, everybody that I've seen talking about it remembers it. It was her little black headset that used to be there, and she would be singing into it, and she was even at touching it at one point. They pointed out at 2 minutes and 44 seconds, I think it was, you could see where she was going to touch it, but it's just gone now. So that was a little crazy. I wanted to share that with you guys in case you haven't heard about that one. That one was a little crazy. So now getting into my haunting, I want to just mention that I refer to this as a haunting because it wasn't just a one-time thing. I didn't just see this ghost walk by once and I was like, I was haunted. It definitely was a little bit more intense than that. Luckily, it wasn't violent or anything like that, but it was more than just, oh, I saw a ghost. Although what I will be talking about after my main haunting are going to be times where I just happen to have seen a ghost or experienced a ghost. So my haunting began in, I believe I was in 4th grade, and the girls that I was playing these cards with were in the 5th grade, and they were the cool girls of the school. They were, popular, and me and my friend really wanted to be their friend. We wanted to be just like them. We wanted them to like us. So it wasn't to the degree where we would bully anybody because of them, or we wouldn't do anything crazy like that, but we would kind of try to dress like them and do our hair like them and just kind of try to be like them. So one day after school, they were going to play these like creepy cards that one of their friends had, and they were like, "Oh well, come with us to play." I think they were even like, if you want to be our friend or something like that. And I was just like, okay, like this sounds fun, like whatever, it's just cards, like what's the harm in that? So it turns out that they were like these like Ouija cards are like they weren't tarot cards, because I work with tarot cards now, and they definitely weren't those, but there was some form of cards where you can ask it just yes or no questions. They actually could have been regular playing cards. I don't remember for sure because it was so long ago. I just thought they were so different. They were unlike any cards I've ever seen. And if they were just regular playing cards, I think they wouldn't have stood out to me so much. But anyways, you could ask them like yes or no questions, and they were face down, and then you would just flip one over. Whatever it was meant a certain meaning. And so we ended up asking if there was a ghost there, and it said yes. And we asked if it was a boy, and it said no. We asked if it was a girl, it said yes. We asked if it was murdered, and she said yes. And then we ended up asking it, are you going to follow one of us home today? And it said yes. And we were just kind of like, oh, like we better just end this game. So we kind of just pulled the cards together, and we all just scattered and just kind of left. We all just went our own separate ways. And I'm curious to know if to this day, like if anything happened with the other players of the game that day, or was I the only one that got haunted? But anyways, it wasn't too long after that. I want to say it was about a few months after that happened. I saw her, the little girl. My friend was spending the night, and me and her were eating a bag of pretzels. It had like dry mustard on them, and it was like the end of the bag, and I was like trying to reach for all the mustard, I was like putting my hand way in there, and as I was doing that, I was like looking around, like, I was just like, so I was like trying to grab all the mustard powder, and as I was looking around, I saw the little girl, like, she was kind of just standing there, but when she saw that I saw her, she like disappeared. And I screamed, like I literally screamed. And this was like in the nighttime. I'm pretty sure people were sleeping in my house, but my sister heard me and she came running. This was my oldest sister. I have two sisters who I talk about, but this one was my oldest sister, and then there's a middle sister, and then there's me, and then now there's my little brother, but he wasn't here for any of this. So my sister comes running out, and she's like, oh my God, are you okay? And I'm like, yeah, I just saw a ghost. And she's like, oh my God, come to my room. It's okay. You and your friend can sleep in here. So then we go into her room, and she's like, I see that man too. He scares me. And I'm like, no, it wasn't a man. It was a little girl. And she's like, wow, I've never seen a little girl before, but I've seen the man, and he won't hurt us. Like, don't worry about it. And I was like, okay. Like, I already thought maybe that's kind of weird how she said she's seen ghosts before, and it wasn't a little girl. It wasn't until I played those cards that the little girl started to haunt us, because eventually that sister did see the little girl. Everybody who lived in that house saw the little girl eventually, including my grandpa, who's now passed himself, and my grandmother, and my mom, and even my friend. I spent the night at her house once, and she saw her, and everybody just that was kind of around me saw her. And from there, it just kind of started with the haunting. She would like whisper in my ear. She would turn on the light, turn it off. There was this incident where my mom and I were fighting, and I was like locked outside. Not really, but my mom was just like, well, stay out there then, type of thing. And I was like knocking on the door, like, let me in. And all of a sudden the doorknob just kind of rattled. And I remember like I was looking in, because there was like a little peek where you can see underneath the curtain, and there was nobody there, but the doorknob just opened for me. And I just knew it was the little girl, and that's kind of how I knew where she was like not being evil. She was just trying to basically tell me something. So it came to a point where I was so sick of it. I was so sick of being scared, and I was so sick of not knowing what was going on, why she was doing this. So I saw her one day like walk into my grandma's room, and she kind of she saw me, like she almost like stopped to make sure I saw her, and then she walked in almost like telling me like, come, like I need to tell you something. Or so I basically got the feeling she wanted me to go in there. So I went in there and I shut the door, and I just remember I was like, I could feel her presence. I remember even like my hands were out, and I was like, look, like I know you're here, I know you're trying to talk to me, like what is going on, like what do you want, you know? And I could just feel like she was like trying, but it's not like she could just talk to me. So nothing ever came of it that day. But since I asked her that, like that day, after that, she basically started to show me things and try even harder to communicate with me. I think as soon as I kind of gave her that okay, she was like, okay, I'm gonna try to do this. So at some point we moved to another state, and she came to me in a dream, and I feel like this was her only way to communicate with me at that point. You know, I was getting older and I was away from that house. I'm not sure if the house had anything to do with it, but I was away from that house and everything like that. So it was a dream that I had of her this time, and she was coming like closer and closer and closer behind me, to where she eventually got right behind me, and she put her hands out like that. And I believe she was trying, I think she did actually end up showing me, because at some point I did realize what I saw what happened to her. But during that moment in that dream, kind of all that happened was she put her hands out like that, and then I ended up waking up like in my actual bed crying, and I said, mommy, in like a little girl's voice. I can't tell you guys, like this was like a little 7-year-old's voice that was coming out of my body, and I was bawling, and it was like if I was breathing for the first time. And it was just so overwhelming, I think, for the both of us, because after that she didn't, you know, really contact me for a while, and I was just so creeped out by the actual physical experience that it wasn't until much later I realized that she actually did show me, you know, what happened to her. And so I'm a little bit older now. I eventually end up having my own, you know, child and everything. And I thought I was done with the haunting for good. But I did have one last dream of her where she called me on the phone, and she had this, it was a little girl's voice and then also like a demon's voice. So I don't know if it was actually her or something else messing with me, or just a nightmare that I had, but it was of her and, you know, with her. And she got on the phone and she goes, you know, hello, Victoria. I just wanted to let you know that I'm never gonna leave you alone. It's my job to demise you. And I woke up that next morning and I told my oldest sister about it, who was aware of my haunting, had seen the little girl herself, everything like that. And sorry, I just wanted to make sure that it was still recording. And I told her, you know, the little girl told me, I'm never gonna leave you alone. It's my job to demise you. So we decided to search up that word we got on her little computer, and the word was from like, you know, the 18th century is where it originates from, and it basically means to terminate or like to end in death. And I was like, nope, like I took that as a threat, as a curse. I do believe, you know, for a long time after that, I was cursed, just weird little things. Bad luck was on my side. And then I didn't like to talk about my haunting. I didn't like to even mention the fact of the little girl because I felt like I was so cursed that if I mentioned it, something really bad might come of it. So I didn't like start going to church or anything that crazy, but I really did start to pray and ask God, for help with this. And I was really trying to just be stronger than that. And that was what I knew to turn to. So I did, and I just prayed a lot about it. And eventually I feel like I was able to kind of let it all go. And I realized, a curse is only real if you believe in it, so I just decided to kind of let it all go. And I don't think that was the purpose of the little girl. I just think after that dream, it ended just kind of badly between us, and it could have not have even been her. So at some point, my sister, calls me, and we're both like adults now, just living our separate lives. And she's like, Bubba, like, because they called me Bubba. So she was like, Bubba, the little girl like came to me in a dream and she showed me how she died. And I was like, oh my God, she did the same thing to me. And we exchanged stories. I listened to her, she listened to mine. It was the same story. She showed us both the same thing. So the story that she showed us was it was her and her mom, and they were being chased or hunted rather by these group of Indians. I say Indians, they were white, like cowboys. I'm sorry. They themselves were Native American, the mother and her child, and they were being chased by a group of white cowboys. And I know this because I saw the guy himself, and he had a big cowboy hat, and he was digging this hole, and they just knew it was for them, and they were trying so hard for it to not happen. But eventually they found them, and they shot the mom, just boom, shot her, and the little girl said, "Mommy," which I think explains why that night in my dream I woke up saying, "Mommy." It was just kind of like when she was showing me what happened, it kind of played out in real life. So she was like, "Mommy." And then the guys like looked at her. I see there was other guys surrounding him, but what I saw, it was focused in on just the one guy with the cowboy hat. But he did have other men with him, but they were just kind of there in the background. So he and the little girl made eye contact, and she goes, and I think that kind of also explains why after she said, "Mommy," I was like breathing for the first time. It felt like in that dream that I got awoken from, because as the story goes, she said, "Mommy," and then they made eye contact, and she was like she knew she was next, and she tried to start to run, but unfortunately, he did end up shooting her too and just put her in the hole. And that's how the story ended. That's all I saw. That's all my sister saw. And I thought it was over, even then. I was like, okay, that's it. So I'm like moving on with my life, trying to get past all this. I end up going to culinary school where I meet a palm reader, and I've always been into that kind of stuff. So I asked her to read my palm, and it was fun for her. Well, not really fun. She actually had a really bad experience with it, and she was hesitant to read my palm, but it was something that she did and something that was in her family. So when I asked her to, she was okay with it. So she read my palm as far back from me being kind of like little. She just kind of would see weird little things, and she saw my haunting, and she said if I had any questions about it, it's going to be underneath a big dead tree. And she's like, that's all I'm gonna see, that's all I'm gonna read for you, I'm gonna just stop there. She didn't like reading too far into people's future. So it turns out that the house that I was haunted in had a big dead tree in front of it. So I start to think, maybe the house actually did have to do with it. Maybe it wasn't just the cards. Maybe the cards called her from the house. I don't know. It's all still a big sort of mystery as far as if the cards and the house were connected in any way. But she did say the answers to my questions would be underneath a big dead tree. It could be a different tree altogether, but it just so happens that the house that this happened in, there was a big dead tree in front. So that just planted a seed in my head. I was like, this tree, I need to dig it up. Like if there's bones under there or something, this little girl, wants to be found. I just think she just didn't want to be forgotten. So I just always kept that in the back of my mind. I would always drive by that house, and at some point, like, I would just stop and take pictures, and eventually I got down and I talked to the people who live there, which I have a whole like YouTube video on it. It's somewhere in my videos if you guys want to look for it, where I end up asking the people who live there now if there's a ghost there. And the lady said, yes, there's a little girl. And whew, my heart, I couldn't believe it. I was like, oh my God, why is she still here? And so I told the lady about the palm reader and how she said that if there's any questions, we're going to find the answers underneath the tree. So I told that to the lady. I just felt like it was my, mission, my job to tell her maybe it might be under the tree. I don't know. Well, since then, my sister, who still lives, like, not in that town, but in the area, passed by it, because we all pass by that house. Like, if you live there, we're sorry. We're not trying to creep on you. It's just that house really impacted us. So once, while my sister was driving by, she saw that they dug up the tree. Like, can you believe it? They actually dug it up. Of course, like, she didn't get down and ask them if they found anything, but I kind of feel like it's almost complete now for me. Like, I can almost now have peace knowing that I shared the message of it might be under the tree and that they actually, dug up this tree. I do plan to do a follow-up at some point and go stop by there, talk to them for real, ask them if I can record it, I don't know if I'm going to go in the house. I haven't decided if, I want to go in or not, but I do plan to go and talk to them and ask them, what really happened when they dug up the tree, if anything. And I pretty much think that sums up my haunting as of now. And this was just a few years ago that I did that follow-up. And my haunting started in the 4th grade. So as you guys can see, it definitely has lasted me a lifetime, which I am now, I realize I'm grateful that I've ever got to experience anything like that. And if I was able to help a spirit in that way, then I am proud to have been a part of something like that. So now we'll get into other experiences that I've had with other ghosts, not the little girl, which there are so many, so get ready. Again, the point of this isn't to prove anything to anybody. I just would like to share my experiences. So also, they're not going to be in any, chronological order here, because as I was like remembering them, they were just coming sporadically. It wasn't like, oh, first it was this, then it was this, then it was this, then it was this. Like, it was like, oh, that one, and then that one, and then that one. So the time frames jump around a lot, but I don't know if that really matters. But anyways, so the first one here we'll talk about is my uncle had this creepy room in the house that we were living in with him. And one day my sister and I say a creepy room because he stored a lot of collectibles, like glass clown dolls and just like weird creepy porcelain dolls and all these other weird things. We never went in there, so I don't know exactly what was in there. But one day we were playing outside and from in that room, there was these red eyes like looking out at us. So we were like, oh my gosh. And we were really young. That was my first experience, I want to say, ever, as far back that I can remember. I was like 5 or 6. I wasn't, you know, like a baby, but who knows? I probably had some experiences as a baby. I just don't even remember them. So another one was, I had this dream where there was like this dark, I've heard about it a lot. It's like a common thing that happens. It's this like dark energy or entity or something that's like chasing you. And for me, I was running down this block and the lights in front of me were lit up, but the lights behind me were just like shutting down to just pure darkness. And I knew no matter what, I couldn't let the darkness catch up to me. So I'm running, and eventually I just wake up and I'm like, oh my gosh. And I look at the side of my bed, and it's that black darkness that was chasing me in my dream, and it was just staring down at me, watching me sleep. And in that same house that happened in, which was like it was an apartment, completely different from the other one. In that same one though, I was sleeping one night, and I was sleeping with my sister, and we had our little dog because we shared a room. And I had one foot out and one foot in, and something like touched my foot that was out of the blanket, which really creeped me out because that's always been my fear about having, you know, one foot out and one foot in. I'm like, I can't have one foot out because something's gonna grab your foot, you know. And it's like, yeah, right, that'll never happen. Well, it didn't grab my foot, it just kind of like did a swoop, and it said like woo, and like this really high pitched woo. And my sister heard it, and my dog heard it, and she was like, oh my god, did you hear that? And I was like, it touched me. Like, yes, I heard it and I felt it. Another time we saw this weird like cloud formation in the sky that seriously looked like this angry man just looking down at us. And we were like, okay, like, yeah, it's probably, people could just say, okay, it was the clouds. Yes, that's fine, but I do have to throw it in here with my experiences because of how detailed this was. It wasn't just, so yeah, I'm just gonna leave that there. We saw a face in the clouds that really creeped us out. We were convinced it was an actual face. Another time, me and my sister and a group of our friends were hanging out in the car, and all of a sudden a face appeared in the like window of a crying clown, and she was like crying blood. Well, I say blood, but I mean there was no color. But my sister was too, like, she was like, nope, I'm not looking. So she didn't look, but the rest of us saw that. Another time, my sister and my mom and I went out to the movies. We locked everything up, and when we came home, the apartment was still locked and everything, but the room to our bedroom was locked. We were locked out of it. There was like papers askew everywhere. A picture of like, my mom had like a picture of like the Last Supper that was knocked down, flipped over on the floor. And in that same apartment, my sister's friend was spending the night, and she was like, oh, like, is that man gonna be here too? And my sister was like, what man? And the girl was like, yeah, I just saw a man in your mom's room. So there was like this weird ghost in that apartment that like made a mess of it one day. There was this other house that we lived in. It was the house of my sister's ex mother-in-law. So we kind of have a lot of time spent at that house where at some point each of us rented a room there. My mom has, my sister has, and I have. And each of us have had a ghostly encounter. My mom was there when she was renting the room, and she heard the ghost call out her name in my grandpa's voice, which my grandpa had been, you know, since passed for many years. So clearly it wasn't him. My sister had a bunch of weird little things happen to her, and I had weird things happen to me. One of them was like my purse was just on the table, and the ghost just kind of like walked by and like opened my purse. Like it was just like, like I heard it. It was just like, it sounded like a frustrated like, and my purse just kind of opened and slammed itself down. Like it was already down, but it was just like, And I was like so creeped out. But the creepiest thing that happened to me in that house was when I first moved in, I had my chef's knife from culinary school, and it went missing like on one of the first days that I was like living there, within the first week. And it was nowhere to be found. I don't know where it could have gone. And the day that I was leaving, I was packing boxes, I was building the boxes from scratch, and I was putting things in them like clothes and stuff. And I was like stacking the boxes right here, and like the closet was right in front of me. So I'm stacking the boxes. Next thing you know, I take a pile of clothes like from the closet, and I look to the stack of boxes, and my chef's knife, the one that went missing like a year prior, was like jammed in there with like the blade facing down, like right at my neck, where like if it would have like fallen, it literally would have like gotten me on the way down. Like, I'm not even kidding you. And I like to joke around. I still have that knife and I use it, and I like to be like, oh, this is my ghostly artifact, because I'm convinced the ghost hit it and tried to kill me with it. So that was the creepiest thing that happened in that house. Another time, my friends and I were out just, hanging out, having a good time. And this was back in like, 2005 or 6, before we actually had iPhones and iCloud storage and stuff like this. So I just had one of my little, I don't want to say flip phones because it wasn't that far back. Maybe it was one of those cool little slide phones or something. But we were taking pictures, just like, oh yeah, we're having fun. And the next day I was like going through the pictures, and there was a ghost in the picture. It was like this girl wearing a white dress with like black hair, and all of us were wearing, things like this, like shirts and jeans, and this one person was wearing a white dress. And I counted all of the people that were there with us, and she shouldn't have been in that photo, but she was. So that was another creepy time I've seen a ghost. Like I mentioned before, I have driven by that house and just taken pictures. Well, one of the times I was looking at the picture and I zoomed in on it, and I noticed that there was a ghost in the window. I'm not exaggerating here, I can't make this stuff up. I mean, I guess I could, but I'm not, I promise. I would never lie to you guys or to myself or to anything, this is not what that's about. So let's see, another time I played Bloody Mary in the mirror, and you're supposed to turn around, do all this stuff, and I did everything precise, and I started to see the outline of a person, and I just ran because I knew what happened next, like she scratches you or something. So I was like, nope. So I left, and the Mary, part was real where I ran, but I do want to say, I think I did have a weird scratch like the next day. Like, I was like, yeah, right. And then I was like looking, and I was like, oh my God. Like, I want to say maybe I did. It could have been me. I could be making this part up, but I do remember kind of being like, whoa, because there actually was like a scratch also. But I just ran before I actually saw like her face. And let's see. Another time I was coming home from school, and I had this routine where we eat a cup of noodles and then like go watch Tarzan and whatever else they would show me on, 90s kids cartoons, television after school. It was pretty fun. And anyways, I had my cup of noodles in my hand, kind of like this. And I was looking out the window with it just because I was just walking, looking out the window, something caught my attention. And it was this ghost zombie looking thing wearing an army uniform. It turns out where we lived was right over battlegrounds of the natives and the, whites. So I figured maybe it was a ghost of him. But anyways, of like one of the soldiers. And he was like scratching at the window and looking like that. And I like dropped my cup of noodles to the ground. I crawled out of the room. I didn't really know what to do. So I was like, do I call 911? Do I call my sisters? Because I knew I'd been seeing ghosts and it looked a lot like a ghost. So I was like, I can't call 911. They're going to, think I'm crazy. So I just had to wait till my sisters got home, and as soon as they did, I went and looked out back, and there was like scratches on the window, and that was just creepy confirmation that what I saw was either an actual man or an actual ghost. And another time was, this one's a little different than me seeing a ghost because I knew the person. It was a friend of ours, and I say friend, she was an acquaintance, but we did hang out at some point. There was a good time where we would, like, you know, go to her house. So okay, I'll say friend, I'm sorry, a friend of ours, and she actually had taken her own life. And I wasn't really close with her that much. It wasn't like her best friend or anything, but I was a little concerned. I wanted to know why. And I put, excuse me, I'm all like clogged up today. It must be like allergies or something. You're gonna have to excuse all my little noises. But I was really curious as to understand, you know, why did she do this? I just wanted to know why. So I put everything that I had mentally into asking her, you know, why did you do this? What happened? Why, you know? And I had a dream of her, and in my dream, she was getting ready. You know, it was her, and she was like doing her mascara in the mirror, like I saw her there, and she was like, oh hey, like I didn't know you were here, and how's it going, and blah blah blah. And in the background of us talking was a ghost, and she was like, you know, like she knew the ghost was there, and I was like, did you see that? And she was like, oh, like, you know, don't worry about it, like just kept talking and was just so happy to see me. And the ghost was like kept getting closer and trying to draw more attention, and she was trying to avoid it. She was like, oh, just forget about it. So then eventually the ghost and me catch up, and I realized the ghost is her. And I was like, you know, Mary, why did you do it? And she looks at me, and her ghost was really sad. It wasn't the happy girl who I saw getting ready in the mirror, you know, talking to me. The ghost was really sad, and she said, you know, because I felt like nobody liked me. And then I woke up, and I was like, okay, you know, now I know. She told me. And from what I got from that was like, I think she was in a place where she didn't know that she had passed, and she thought she was just living her life normally. Like I caught her in her own version of I don't know what, because like she wasn't aware that the ghost was her. So I feel like that in itself was a message as to where she was at spiritually. And I've had another 2 more experiences like that with spirits where I've reached out to them and they've come to me, not in dreams. These were just as I was living my life, they answered my questions. So that was that. That was, I think, at the end of my experiences with other spirits. I do believe that I might be forgetting a few, but those are the ones that I could remember. If I can think of anything else, I'll add them in the comments or something. So next I want to talk about really quickly, because I'm coming up here on the amount of time that I gave myself to record this, as far as I know where my storage is at on my phone and stuff. So I'm going to kind of rush through this one and just kind of, because I like to tie in cool ghost stories with the topic of what I was talking about. So I called it the Old Stage Road Weeping Widow, because this was a version of, you know, the Weeping Widow stories that happened to be right down the street from where I was haunted from that little girl. So the versions that I heard, and we kind of all heard living around in the area, was there would be this lady on the side of the road in her wedding dress, and she would be crying, and either like she would get you to stop for her, then she would, you know, get in the car with you, or she would just appear in your car whether you stopped for her or not. And she would start telling the story of, you know, how her husband left her, and this really, really sad story. And that's as far as the story goes for the ones that I heard that happened on the road that I'm talking about. But the rest of the story goes that if you don't ask her to leave, eventually she will get your car to crash. And this road where everybody sees her is on one of the deadliest roads in that area. A lot of crashes happen there, and they just don't know why. So, you know, maybe it could be because of this ghost haunting the area. And this haunting is so famous that it did make it to the newspaper. It was featured in the Californian, where they're quoting the locals as the stories that they heard, which are much similar to the one that I just told. The story of the weeping woman herself originates in like Latin folklore. It was mainly told in Mexico and Central and Southern America. But as the story was spread throughout the world, it turns out that most of the countries have their own version of this. A popular other version of the story of her is where she'll be around water, and you can hear her crying around riverbanks and lakes and things like that. So that's also another really popular one. But the one that I had, you know, experience with was where she was just crying on the side of the road, and she would get into your car and things like that. So I think I'm going to just kind of wrap it up there. I am happy with this re-recording. I hope it is, you know, better than the first one. If you guys saw that one, I'm really sorry. It was really skippy, really jumpy. So again, I myself have personally never had an experience with that weeping woman myself, just for the fact that I lived right next to where it happened and I heard the stories. I thought it would be fun to tie in with this episode. But living around there and driving past that road, you can definitely feel some type of energy that many people, including myself, avoid driving it at night because it kind of cuts across and takes you like to the back of the town, or you can go all the way around, and you know, so it depends on where you live in the town. But regardless, you could choose to drive around it, which if you can, many people do. And like I mentioned, including myself, I can't remember really ever driving it at night, and if I ever did, it was almost like holding your breath through a tunnel the entire time. Like you're just kind of like you're just hoping nothing happens, and it's just such a somber feeling driving down that stretch of road. And again, I like to call my haunting a haunting because it wasn't just, you know, one-time event. It was like a reoccurring thing, to where the little girl showed me what happened, and I think I had a full circle haunting there. And I hope you guys, you know, enjoyed the little ending of the Weeping Woman. I don't know, I'm pretty sure many of you heard of her. They made movies about it. They made Mama, and I think they actually made like La Llorona. So it's kind of all the same story there. And one of them did just happen down the street from where I grew up. So yeah, I am going to end this here, and you guys stay tuned and bear with me. I will be doing live uploads with the episodes. Just this week was a little, you know, scratchy for me and my internet. So anyways, just leave me a comment and let me know your ghost stories. I love to hear people's ghost stories. Honestly, as a ghost person myself, yeah, ghosts are boring and everyone's probably like sick of hearing about them. But us, I feel like that have had that experience, we like to hear each other's stories. So go ahead and please tell me yours. in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe. That way you don't miss when I go live, or even when I just have to upload another video. And don't forget that whatever I talk about, and whether you have experienced it or not, in the end, it's up to you to believe it or not. Okay,